Before I started my career with Espresso Podcast Production, starting this business, podcasting was actually something that I experimented with in college. And in this episode, I'm sitting down with my professor who helped me shape this journey, and now he teaches podcasting at UNLV. How cool is that? This is such a full circle episode. As we all know, podcasting has changed a lot over the past decade, and now universities are starting to teach it. So, in this episode, I'm sitting down with Dave Nourse, a professor at UNLV School of Journalism and Media Studies, to talk all about what he's teaching in his college podcasting class. We talk about what podcasting actually looks like. What do students learn about podcast strategy, storytelling, and production? And of course, how the industry is changing and how he's helping students keep up to date with this. So hopefully they can go on and start their own podcasts and get into the world of podcasting just as I did. Honestly, without UNLV and without teachers just like Dave Nourse, I would not have this business that I have today, which I think is so cool that, of course, you don't have to go to college to start a business, but I never knew that I would enjoy podcasting, and I did it with a friend in college, and that's where I learned, okay, I kind of like this thing, and one thing led to another, and my business was started, right? So while no, I didn't need to go to college to start my business, without UNLV's journalism program, I would not be where I am today. So in a way, I did. Please enjoy this episode. Honestly, I just think that it's so cool that I get to kind of turn the table and now be the one interviewing someone who taught me so much in college. So please enjoy. Welcome to the Podcast Café, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Hey Dave, welcome into the Podcast Cafe. I am so excited to have you here. It's truly like a full circle moment.
Haley, it really is a full circle moment. We go from working with each other as kind of teacher, student, volunteer radio station people, and now I'm on your podcast. It's amazing.
Yes, I know. I bet that's this is what you are a teacher for, getting students to do the things that you're teaching them. And yeah, so I went to school for journalism, but started a podcast with a friend in the studios that you're probably right next to right now, and if you're still in the same office. But
just down the hall.
Yeah, so yeah, before we get into all of the stuff that we're talking about today, I have to ask you my signature question I ask everyone is, what is your go-to coffee order?
Oh, okay. So I'm pretty boring, Haley. I like iced coffee with a white chocolate or a white mocha, depending on kind of how you do it. And it doesn't matter if it's 110 degrees in Las Vegas or, well, it never really gets to 10 degrees in Las Vegas. But in the wintertime, maybe 40 degrees in Las Vegas. I'm just an iced coffee kind of guy. And so, yeah, nice and easy. Give me an iced coffee. Give me a couple shots of white chocolate in there. No need for creamer. The white chocolate is enough, but that is my go-to.
Okay, that sounds delicious. I'm also an iced coffee drinker year-round, and I think it's because I grew up in Las Vegas. And even though now I'm in rainy Seattle where it is freezing, I'm still an iced coffee drinker.
And I got mine right here, just in case.
Amazing. I love it. It's very essential to the show. Okay, so I am really excited to talk about what you do because I think the audience is going to be really amazed that they're now teaching podcasting in college. I think that is amazing because I took what I learned in radio and in your editing classes and all those type of things and applied it to podcasting. And it kind of was like a learn as I go kind of situation, but now I have a business where I do just that. So, tell us more about yourself, your teaching journey, and when podcasting came into play in your life.
Okay, so I'll do this in kind of parts. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I wear a few different hats in the J School here at UNLV. From the time that you and I worked together at UNLV, I was running the radio station as the operations manager. We had 3 channels at the time, kind of a traditional, it wasn't a traditional, but like a contemporary jazz and like light favorites, listen at work type station. We had a student run station on one of our HD sidebands. And then we had another HD sideband where we broadcast NPR programming. So I was running that and, working with students that were interested in learning about broadcasting, whether it was maybe they wanted to be a host or they just really liked music or they loved to hear themselves talk. So they wanted a talk show. Some were interested in sports and sports broadcasting. And it was a great job. I loved it. While I was in school or while I was working at UNLV, there was the opportunity to go back to school. And so I went and worked on a doctorate and finished a doctorate in educational technology, which kind of combined media, which I loved, and technology because I'm a geek, and how to work with students that are interested or passionate about something. And it was really a great way to kind of blend all of these things I was interested in together. And I finished that degree program in 2017. And so the radio station is under the umbrella of the journalism school here at UNLV. And the director of the school says to me one day, Dave, you have a PhD and you're running the radio station. I need you to come work for me. And I was like, I do work for you. And he was like, no, 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 no. I need you to come work with me a little bit more. And he essentially was looking for me to teach more classes and engage a little bit more on kind of the academic side of things rather than just day-to-day operations of the radio station. And so I said, sure, no problem. And UNLV being a state institution, we never moved quickly, but we eventually moved and I transitioned out of one role and now I have another one and it's pretty cool. And I get to work with students and I teach classes and I wear a hat as like the undergraduate coordinator and I run our internship program, but blah, 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 blah. Enough about that. I've always loved audio. I'm an audio guy and I got involved with audio when I was in college. I did college radio and loved it, kind of didn't really think that it was a viable career option, but I just kind of kept getting these cool opportunities. And so even though I didn't have a degree in broadcasting, it was something I was passionate about and I really enjoyed being able to create things and engage with an audience and all the things that we do in podcasting. Just it was a little bit more one directional, right? It was like I talk into a microphone, an audience hopefully hears me. But that kind of set the stage. And I loved audio stories. I grew up, my mom was a big NPR person, so I listened to things like This American Life and Fresh Air with Terry Gross and kind of, the OGs of podcasting. Anyway, so I've taught a bunch of different classes here. One of those classes, I didn't start the podcasting class, interestingly enough. Prior to COVID, we have another faculty member here. His name is Dr. Ben Burrows. And Ben saw kind of the potential of podcasting. This was a couple of years after Serial dropped their first season. And so there was like a lot of buzz about that and true crime generally. And he was like, hey, we should try to start something like this here. Ben's challenge was, while he was a podcast consumer, he didn't really know how to create podcasts. And we were like, okay, so it was very kind of much theoretical. How could we build a podcast? And so it was a learning experience, kind of much like you said yours was. It was like, all right, how do we tinker? How do we figure this out? And eventually we got to the point where it's like, okay, the class was doing stuff and it was really exciting. And then COVID hit and everything kind of fell apart, at least for a little while. And when we kind of came back to campus, Burroughs needed to start teaching another course. And so we brought in another Ben Nourse, who I work with around here, and he picked up the podcasting class. And Ben was able to kind of take what Dr. Burroughs had built and kind of build on it a little bit more and expand that. And then a couple of years ago, we needed Ben Morse to teach another class because he also does a lot of things in the social media space, and we needed somebody to take on one of those classes. And so our director then asked me to step in because I had been running a podcast workshop. Anyways, so I was happy to take on. The class had been going for, 6 or 7 years at that point. And so I know I'm just blathering at this point, but it's like the podcast class started kind of as an offshoot of like the excitement in the field that really started bubbling after Serial kind of made its mark. And we've been slowly building and iterating. And it's been a fun class because, as you know, and your listeners know, the industry has changed so much in the past 10 years. Podcasting, which was audio only, now has video and is like, just like, what does it even mean to have a podcast anymore? So it's really fun to teach the class today because podcasting can mean so many different things. And it's really exciting, but it's also very challenging. And we can talk about this a little bit more later if you'd like. But like, what do you include in a class called podcasting, right? You can have like a
Right.
whole curriculum built around podcasting. And this is just like we're trying to incorporate it all into one class. And anyway, so we can talk a little bit more about that later. But that's kind of, my story in a nutshell and kind of why I got interested in podcasting. It was because of broadcasting and because I loved stories and kind of how I got involved with the class today.
That's so cool. I was in college from 2015 to 2019, and I remember, like, the social media classes being pretty new when I was there too. So I like that, obviously everything changes, and I like how the classes are adapting with that, and I didn't know that Serial was the reason that it all got started. That's so cool. I love
Well, I
that.
think we can like point to Serial as be like, this is a
Totally.
thing now, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
we have this new way of kind of creating stories and distributing it to people. And I think that I don't know if we can specifically say it was because of Serial, but I think we all kind of realized when Serial came out, it was like, this is a form of media which can really
Yeah.
resonate with a huge audience. We
Yep.
should explore this a little bit more.
Yeah.
It took a few more years after Serial hit for us to actually launch the class. So it was probably 2017, 2018, right about the time you were getting ready to graduate. That, of course,
Mm.
that's when we do everything, though. You graduate and then we do cool things, right? But look at it from the other way, Haley. You laid the foundation for us to do cool things.
Okay, I like that. I like that. No, that's really awesome. And yeah, I mean, those studios were the only reason that my friend and I started the podcast was because we found something that we were both interested in and we had access to it. So I think without that, we definitely wouldn't like she still runs the podcast that we started back in 2018, 2019. So, I think it's just really cool, and yeah, I am curious, like, what do you teach in a podcasting class? Like, what does the curriculum look like, and how are students taking this? And maybe they don't have a career in podcasting like I do, but how are they applying it to different parts of their media that they're studying?
Well, it's hard to kind of figure out what you need to keep and what you need to what you should focus on and what you should touch on, and then really what you should do a deep dive on.
Mhm.
And so I'm like looking at my schedule right now, and I try to have, so I split the class up kind of. We have the first part of the class, which is up until the midterm. In this case, it's like up until spring break. And then the second half of the class, which goes from spring break to the end of the semester. And kind of, so we think about what do you need to know in the first half of the class? So if I look at kind of what are we doing in the first half of the class, we look at, all right, what are the types of podcasts that are out there? We talk about narrative podcasts, we talk about interview podcasts and chat casts, things like that, and kind of what the strength of each of those formats would be. And we can talk about genres and things like that. But to give folks an idea of, is it people talking to each other or is it people telling stories, right? We talk about strategic storytelling. Who is your audience, right? What does your audience care about? How do you know that, they're going to tune in to hear one thing, and then if you're starting to talk about something else, it's like, why would they stick around for that? Like, so understanding what your message is and who you're talking to, and then how you can utilize that appropriately. We do a lot of stuff with kind of basic audio production as well. How do you talk into a microphone? Does the kind of microphone matter? In some cases, it does. In some cases, you should worry a little bit less about the tech. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to sound all that good. And what really people don't have any patience for in 2026 is for something that doesn't sound good. So we want to make sure that, if you're going to do this, you have the technical wherewithal so that you can make sure that your product sounds as professional as possible. So we get in and we get into the studio and we talk about basic mic technique. We get into Adobe Audition, which is the audio editor that we use here at UNLV. And we talk about, basic editing kind of in the waveform mode and in multi-track mode if you wanted to layer audio together, and, try to how to, again, give you the requisite knowledge that you need so you can put something basic together. It's not an advanced audio production class. We have those, but this is really, what are the bare bones that you need to be as successful as possible. Then we look at things like, I'm looking at my list over here, content. Like, how do you really kind of hone in on what you should be talking about? I use a great, it's not really a textbook per se, but it's a fun book called Make Noise as our textbook. And, there's a bunch of tricks and tips that the author has. Like, if you had to distill your entire podcast down to 10 words, what would those 10 words be? And you have to be as specific as possible. And that kind of informs everything that you do, right? From, how do you align the questions for your interview to, what should your intro really be focusing on? It all needs to kind of tie back to what is your pod all about? And that kind of ties back to strategic storytelling. We spent
Mm.
days talking about interviewing and kind of interviewing techniques. Interviewing is a skill. It's hard to be a good interviewer. Everybody's like, yeah, it's just talking to somebody. But yeah, I mean, you need to talk and you need to listen. You need to absorb. You can't be going, all the time into the microphone. Super annoying, things like
Oh my
that.
gosh, yes.
And so there's like so much to cover. And that's just like in the first part of the class. And then I want to give the students the opportunity to start creating as well. So I give them some audio assignments, give them the opportunity to work doing some interviewing, try to put some things together and do a little bit of layering. It's very much like trying to balance the theoretical, this is what you should be thinking about, with the practical, let's try to apply this in the studio. And then after the midterm, after spring break, we come back and we talk about things like branding. How do you solidify what your brand is? We talk about the fundamentals of storytelling, right? What is a story? It's got a beginning and a middle and an end. And even if you don't have a narrative pod, if it's an interview pod, interviews have a beginning and a middle and an end, and you're trying to get somewhere, right? We talk about marketing and how marketing is so important in podcasting. How do you differentiate yourself from the thousands of other podcasts that are out there? Video is huge right now, so we spend a little bit of time kind of getting into video and video editing, and like, you don't need to be a videographer, but you need to have at least some idea of like lighting, for example, and if your color grading, things like that. Again, little things that make a difference in the presentation, the overall quality. And then things that change like all the time. Like, how is AI impacting podcasting? Because it is. What does success look like in podcasting? Anyways, I know this is a very long and blah, blah, blah way of me answering your question, but that's kind of what the class looks like. What do the students want out of the class? I don't think any of them think they're going to make $1 million starting a podcast. I mean, it would be great, if they made $1 million. I
Yeah.
think they are much more realistic, though, that this is if they can understand the value of podcasting, what does podcasting really bring to an individual or an organization or a brand? Well, it's a value add, right? It's one more tool that you have in your media ecosystem to engage with an audience or a potential audience. And so if you look at your media strategy as a whole, whether you're an information outlet like a news brand, or you're an entertainment outlet, or you want to be an influencer, or whatever it is, right? Your podcast helps reinforce whatever your message is. So you reach them through the social media vertical. You maybe have a Substack newsletter or a blog. A podcast is another spoke from that hub in which you can reinforce your message. And it is ultimately, it can be a part of your media strategy, as big or as small as you want it to be, but it's another way that you can engage and tell your story and reinforce kind of whoever you are. Are you a thought leader, or are you somebody who's engaged with your community? And so I think that's what the students, I at least hope that's kind of what they think about.
Yeah.
As like, again, maybe one day you'll make $1 million, but it certainly won't be your first, after the first episode you drop, or the 10th episode you drop, maybe after the 100th episode you drop, or more likely, hundreds of episodes in, after you've
Mm.
established kind of consistency and an audience and all the things that you and your audience as podcasters know are important.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I wish I took this class when I was at UNLV. That would have saved me a lot of time of figuring out all this stuff. But yeah, you said this earlier of like what even is a podcast anymore. I say that all the time. It's like it's changing. It's like I went to a client's, she was doing a live podcast recording, and it had like 3 video angles and like 5 audio tracks, and I was like, how am I going to edit all this? But it's fine. It all works out, right? And so to that point, I like how the curriculum is changing with what a podcast is evolving to. AI is something I've been definitely keeping my eye on lately because there's AI editing tools. They're not great, but people are using them, right? And as a business owner and as someone who makes all my money from podcasting, like helping other people with their podcasts, it is AI isn't making me nervous yet, but who knows what's going to happen with the whole AI part of podcasting. It's very interesting what's going on.
To that point, AI is a tool, and it still is up to you as the host to come up with good ideas. You can use
Mhm.
AI to help refine those ideas potentially. You can use AI to help with your marketing. I mean, that's where we see a lot of AI tools. You take,
Yeah,
our video feed, and then AI can create 10 clips of our video feed that we can
yeah,
post on social media. Maybe one of those will go viral. That begs another question. If it goes viral on social media, does anybody need to watch or listen to the podcast anymore?
yep,
Big question. We talk about these things. It's like, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by doing this?
yeah,
Um, I don't know. I don't know the answer. But what I do know is that we, both as educators but as practitioners, need to be forward thinking because the space is moving rapidly. And, you know, with that with the rapid pace that we are moving, there are opportunities that we can take advantage of that might make our lives a little bit easier. Maybe I spend a little bit less time editing. That's great. That means I have more time to kind of think about fun ideas for things I can explore or reach
yeah.
out to potential guests. But it also means, okay, well, I need to learn how to video edit. And I was an audio editor
Right,
before, and it's like,
right.
I'm ripping my hair out.
Yeah,
So with the good and the bad. But I think to your point, like, podcasts in 2026, it's like you can go onto Netflix now and watch podcasts. It's like, isn't that just
yeah.
a show? It's like,
They're winning Golden Globes too, like, that is crazy.
right. And so who knows what the future looks like? And will we eventually see two types of podcasts? Will we see very polished and slick podcasts, which look a lot like daytime talk shows?
Mhm.
Or, will we see kind of the other version, which is a little bit more, I don't want to say gritty, but you know what I mean when I say
Yeah,
gritty. It's a little bit more homegrown, but in a way, it's like a little bit more authentic that way. And I can see each has their own value to it. But will we have kind of the haves and the have nots? I don't want to see kind of like the public access TV version of podcasts and then like the network or the streamer version of podcasts, but maybe that's what we get, but both have their value. And just kind of like seeing where the space goes is that's an interesting time. Who knows?
yeah, yeah. So, with your students, are you learning stuff from them? Like, are they doing their own research from podcasting?
Well, here's what's really interesting. I I can really tell new podcasters versus people who have been kind of engaging in the space for a while just by how they refer to what they listened or watched. I watched this podcast or I listened to this podcast.
Mm,
If they say they're watching their podcasts, I know they're probably a little bit newer to the podcasting space, but that's what they associate podcasts with: video. I'm watching on YouTube more likely than not, or watching clips on TikTok or Instagram Reels or whatever. That has been interesting for me because, again, while I haven't been podcasting my whole life, I've been listening to podcasts for a long time, even before what I knew what podcasts were. It's like I would listen to recordings of like old radio shows. It's like
yeah,
that was a podcast. I just called it a recording of an old radio show.
yeah,
It's like, so I will always associate it with like something I listen to. I have headphones on or AirPods in or whatever it is. And so just kind of like thinking about it is interesting because if you are younger and a little bit newer to the medium, you think about it as a visual first medium. Whereas I'm a little bit older and I think about it as an audio first medium. And that doesn't mean one is right or one is wrong. It's just, again, different audiences will approach the medium different ways. And so for us as creators, right, we really need to think about it. If you approach your podcast as an audio first only platform, you may be excluding a younger demo. That may not be good for your bottom line at the end of the day, or for who you ultimately want to reach, or the message that you have. And so that's been super valuable for me just to think about. Like, again, I can't assume that people are going to think about podcasting the way that I'm thinking about it. They're going to
right.
approach it completely different. And having that mindset is, well, I don't know if frustrating is the right word, but it is weird for me at times to kind of have that mindset. It's also really beneficial for me to have that mindset too, because the things that I take for granted or the paradigms that I kind of associate podcasting with That's a me problem, right? And I can't have that. I need to be a little bit broader. And I think the message that I really have is like, okay, with the space changing so rapidly, stay on your toes, stay nimble, be prepared to adjust. And, that's hard. Change is not easy, but this is a space that kind of change is constant. And so I think that's the one thing about podcasting. It's like, just be prepared to adapt.
Totally, totally. What type of podcasts are your students creating by the end of the class?
Sure. So we have as part of the course, we're doing a couple of different things. We work on a school produced podcast together as kind of a group project. Because generally, as you probably remember, college students hate group projects. So I make it a point to assign a group project just because I know it'll drive them crazy.
That's so
Um,
funny.
so we have a school project or a school podcast that we use, which up until this is new for this semester of teaching the class. Up until this point, it's been me and the director of the school, and we interview different faculty members about kind of, what are they researching, what are they doing, what informs their philosophy of teaching. It's frankly, it's like very academically focused, but it's good for like somebody who's like, hey, I'm thinking about taking your class. Let me hear a little bit more about the person that teaches it. So you get a little bit of backstory. So our target audience is like people that want a job at UNLV in the J school, or students that go to school here that eventually are thinking about taking a class. But I realized, what could be a fun group project would be we should get the students in the podcasting class to produce additional episodes that we can drop in the feed. I'll give
Mm,
it a shameless plug. This is the Inside JMS podcast. You can find it on all your podcast platforms. But they should interview alumni that are working kind of in areas of the media industry that they want to get into. And then they can reach out to them and talk to them about, what opportunities did they take advantage of when they were a student, and how did they find their first job, and what did they do to network amongst themselves. So really the students can talk with recent alumni, folks who've graduated within the past 3 to 8 years. Haley, they may reach out to you, just FYI. But
amazing.
and it kind of like hear a little bit about the alumni's journey and how they position themselves to end up doing what they are doing now. I think that will be really helpful for our students, not just in the podcasting class, but our students in the program generally. So they work on that as a group project, and I kind of split them up into groups of 3. And so we'll have them do a couple of those. But then they also will work on their own individual podcasts. So they have to produce a pilot of their pod for the midterm. And, they not only produce the podcast itself, but they do a variety of kind of work on the back end. They need to be thinking about all the things that we would want somebody to think about prior to launching, like what's the sustainability, kind of what are some possible topics that they would want to launch with, who would be folks that they would be interviewing for the first 5 episodes, what's the overall description, what would a logo look like from a
Yeah.
branding perspective. They work on things like that 10-word description. So they really can kind of think strategically about what they're doing. And then they will go ahead and they'll produce it. And it's more of an opportunity for them to workshop things. They may never drop these on a feed somewhere, but they can use it as a launch pad if they want to. It's really more of an opportunity for them to learn by doing. And hopefully they make mistakes. So for example, we were going over one of the audio assignments I gave them earlier this week, and I was talking with one of my students, Bex, and Bex was telling me, oh, I had a disaster of an interview. I said, what happened? Well, the interview itself was fine, but every technical thing that could go wrong went wrong. And I was like,
Mm,
so good that this is happening
yeah.
now when the stakes are low, rather than, okay, well, I'm trying to do this because I need to get this interview out next week. Because what I was telling Bex is, listen, you know what not to do moving forward. And so that is a good learning opportunity, even though it's frustrating in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I have tech issues all the time and I've been doing this for so long, right? Like things just pop up, like my microphone disconnects or somehow the guest didn't get the link or the internet is like these platforms that we record podcasts on take so much bandwidth that sometimes if someone joins from like their phone or whatever, it just it there's always tech issues, but I hope that all the students stick with it because I feel like when someone starts a podcast, there's so much overthinking that goes into it. And now that I'm like 5 years into podcasting or even longer, I mean, I started that podcast in 2018, it's just a lot easier now. It's like I could sit down with anyone and be able to talk about anything that and learn with them. So, yeah, I really hope that your students stick with it because podcasting is ever changing, right? And most podcasts don't make it past episode 10. That's like the big stat out there. I'm sure you teach your students that, where they just drop off. And so if someone has a podcast, has a plan, and sticks with it, they can do amazing things with their show, even if they're not making millions, right? Like my clients are getting brand deals, they're getting clients from their show, they're getting recognition. I use it for brand visibility and networking. That's the way I use my podcasts. And it's just like a never ending way that podcasting can help us in our businesses or in our lives or whatever. Yeah. So I
We
think
talk
that's
a
really
lot about
cool.
sustainability, right?
Yeah.
It's really easy to launch and kinda get your first few episodes out there, but
Yeah.
how do you sustain? So, with that, we also talk about what's your off-ramp? Is this going to go forever? That's fine. Do you have the wherewithal, 2.5 years from now, if you have a full-time job and you have a family and you've got, people that need you in a life and all these other things? Or is it a little bit more short term? Because at least if you know on the front end, okay, this is my plan. I'm going to do something in terms of seasons, and my season has an end. And I might
Mhm.
pick it up for an episode for season two, or I might not. But at least kind of I got somewhere, and you have the understanding. Okay, here's how I do it, and this is my thought process. And if you're intentional on the front end, it can solve a lot of things on the back end as well. So really thinking strategically about what do you have the bandwidth to do? How do you see yourself doing this? And not just for, to your point, not just for the first couple of months, but how do you see yourself doing this 9 months later or a
Yeah.
year and a half from now? Because life is going to change. We don't know what it's going to throw at us. But if you say, no, I'm going to produce three episodes a week and each one's going to be 2 hours long, I would highly encourage you to kind of go back and just think, is that really going to be sustainable in the long run?
Yeah.
Maybe you can always expand, right? But maybe start off a little bit more modest, see how that goes, and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And earlier you mentioned speaking to your students about what success means with their podcast. I think that's also a very interesting topic too, because success means different things to different people, right? Some people want to be top 10 podcasters and have a talk show and win Golden Globes, right?
Mhm.
Whereas other people just want to get things off of their chest. I mean, I have some clients that just use it to talk. People listen, right? But like they truly just use it as like a place for them to share their thoughts. They don't care if they get in the charts or whatever. So, how do you approach that conversation with because I don't know, when I was a student, I like had all these I still have big dreams, right? But I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm young. The world is the world's my oyster," right? So how do you approach that with them of the success piece?
Well, success depends on a lot of different things. And this comes back to your strategic storytelling piece. Who are you talking to and what's the goal? Like, if your goal is to make as much money and a big an audience as possible, you probably shouldn't be doing a podcast about rocks, for example, right? The Rocks for Jocks podcast, I'm sure, is awesome, right? But you're probably not going to attract millions of listeners for every episode you drop. So a lot of it kind of goes back to what are your overall goals? And you can define your success from that. If your goal is to get something off your chest, that's fine. Is it a rant podcast where you're going to rant about everything all day long? And so you may have a very general audience. Are you doing something a little bit more specialized? As you and your audience know, podcasting can be super niche. And so success may be kind of making a name for yourself inside that niche world.
Yeah.
But that might also mean you're only getting hundreds of episodes or hundreds of downloads for every episode. But if that is sparking conversation and you are creating engagement and buzz within this community, that could be hugely successful. I'll give you an example. We have this is what I share with the students. We have, as part of UNLV, a lot of different academic units and a lot of different centers that do different things. One of the things that, as you know, UNLV is primarily positioned for is gaming, right? We have the Las Vegas Strip 2 miles from here. Um, and so on campus, we have the International Gaming Institute. And I was having a conversation with their executive director, maybe a little year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, because they were thinking about launching a podcast. And they were just like, I said, well, who is your target audience over here? And they're like, well, there's probably 20 people in the entire world that would actually care about what we're talking about. And I said, okay, so if you can reach half of them, is that success for you? They're like, absolutely. I was like, perfect. So 10 people. Really, that's an audience of 10.
Yeah.
But they would be happy reaching that audience of 10 because
Yeah.
think about it could be Atlantic City or it could be Macau or it could be, a Native American reservation in the middle of the country somewhere, right? People that care about what this group cares about from a policy standpoint and a law gaming or gaming law perspective. The audience is super small. But if they engage with that potential audience of 20 people and they can actually reach 10 and, initiate some conversation and get some good get some good collaboration with that. That was a win for them. And so success is all dependent on kind of what you're looking for and who your audience is and what your total strategy is. Like you said, like this is a part of your business where you can kind of establish yourself as a thought leader and kind of somebody in the space that really is forward thinking. So you're trying to engage with other people that kind of look to you, Haley, to like, I want to be informed on what podcasts look like, or how can I make my podcast more engaging for a larger audience? Your success is going to look very different than the student that's just like, I want to interview local Las Vegas musicians because, I care about the local music scene over here. It's like,
Mhm.
again, if they can engage with musicians and build more of a following and maybe get one sponsor, cool, that's success. So I know
Yeah.
that's a long roundabout way. I'm sorry, I'm a college professor. I need to stop talking all the
No,
time. But
I love
but
it.
it's like it's a problem over here. But again, that's success is contingent upon what your goals are, and that all gets back to understanding who are you talking to and what is your message and what are you looking to engage with that audience. And if you can understand those, then you can define those metrics for success. And trying to compare yourself to a Joe Rogan or name your top 10 podcaster in 2026
Mhm.
isn't really fair, nor is it realistic.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and that's a conversation I have with people all the time of you don't need millions of listens to have the impact that you think you want, right? Like, you can have a smaller audience and still be impactful, so I love that's the way that you're approaching it with your students, and that's a great example of the gaming school. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we should know about you or UNLV's program before we get into our rapid fire questions?
Let me think. What should you know about me or UNLV's program? I don't know. I would like to say that we're really proud of you, right?
Oh,
For what you've been able to do. You took one audio editing class, 7 or 8 years ago with me, and you were able to take that along with some initiative and a lot of trial and error and make a career out of it. One of the things we want our students, well, we want our students to do a lot of different things, but we want our students to be entrepreneurial, and you certainly are that. And we want them to create things that matter. If you look at the tagline for the school, it's like create content that matters. And you're doing something that matters. And, I think I'll turn the tables on you, Haley, and just say we are proud of you.
oh, well, I appreciate that so much. That's so sweet. I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing too, because truly, like I said, like I wouldn't be doing any of this without UNLV. UNLV is like a huge part of all the success that I've had. So, yeah, this really is a full circle moment.
I'll give
Thank
myself
you
a
for
pat on
saying
the back.
that. So sweet. Thank you. Okay, well, I have a few rapid fire questions that I'm excited to get your answers for. My first one is what is the first podcast that you ever really listened to?
Okay, I'm totally a geek. So think about when podcasting was like really nascent. 2004, 2005, I had this job. I was working at this radio station in Sanford, North Carolina, and I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina. So it was like a 50-minute drive. And so I had a lot of time. And I had an iPod and I figured out how to download old episodes of like NPR shows to it. And so it would pass my time. I connected my iPod from the aux cable into the cassette tape, which went into my 1995 Nissan Pathfinder, and I listened to old episodes of who knows, This American Life or Marketplace Weekend,
Yeah.
who knows what it was. But thank goodness for podcasting because it made that commute so much better.
Totally, totally. No, that's really cool. Okay, as a podcast listener, do you have any pet peeves? I cannot probably guess what yours is just with your background.
Well, you're probably right if you say poor audio technical quality is
Yeah.
if I ever have to turn the volume up or turn the volume down in the middle of a podcast, I will lose my mind. It is ridiculous.
Mhm.
There are other things that annoy me that people who are new to podcasting do when they talk over their guests. I think that's a real challenge. You should
Yeah.
learn to shut up and listen because if you're talking, you're not listening. I do
Yep.
preach that to the students. And I think the other one that I don't get on it as much anymore because things have gotten a lot easier. Uh, but anytime somebody on the table, like they bang their hands on the table or whatever it is, I hear that, and I cannot not hear that. You know who did this all the time? I promise I'm going to stop talking after this. But it's like when Obama was president, he banged the lectern or the podium when he talked, and it wasn't like in a mean way. He just
Yeah.
put his hands on it quite a lot to like make a point. That's all I ever heard. I couldn't pay attention to whatever the speech he was making because all I heard was his hand hitting the podium or the lectern. And so when hosts do that, understand your hands matter. Even if, you're not thinking about it, like if you're banging things, the microphone is going to pick that up. And then
Yeah.
because I'm a weirdo, that's all I hear.
No. I mean, I think that people got so excited that video became a thing that they stopped focusing so much on audio quality, and that is something that, like, makes me rip my hair out. I'm like, "Come on, guys." Like, audio is the most important part of podcasting. Video, in my opinion, is just, like, an add-on plus of new marketing strategies, but the core of it has to be good audio for sure. I think what also kills me is a bunch of filler words. I can do it too, but there's so many tools now that you can edit those out and make the listening experience a lot better, in my opinion, you know?
You bring up a great point. I know this is rapid fire, but I'll stop after this. I think something that it bothers me, but I understand why people do it. It's a time thing. When there are things that could be edited out that are left in because it's authentic,
Mm,
and whether those
mhm.
are filler words or the conversation goes on a tangent. And this is what I preach to the students. As a host, you are proxies for the audience. And what is every person who's listening's most valuable thing? It's their time. And the
Yeah,
fact that they are investing their time with you means you shouldn't waste their time. And so if something is not core to the conversation, you got to cut it. Now, a lot of people don't. They'll leave it in because, again, it's authentic. This is how the conversation went. But if it's 5 minutes of my life that I could have for something else, that's valuable. And so if your podcast is 20 minutes as opposed to 30 minutes because you went in as a host and you were just like, this was good, but it wasn't great, you should err on the side of making it great. Because not only does it make your podcast more impactful, but it also really values your audience and their resource. They are choosing to invest their time to listening or watching you. And you can't ever take that for granted. And so it's more work for the host or the producer that the host pays to actually, go through and cut out the stuff which isn't fundamental. That's why it's so important to have like that 10-word description. What is the core of what you are all about? And if it's not
yes.
core to that, until you reach the level of success where people will hang with you because of, you've reached that level, right? Err on the side of giving them exactly what the audience is tuning in for or clicking on for. And, once you build up that level of trust later on, okay, you can include a little bit more, but don't
Mhm.
take your audience for granted.
Yeah, 100%, I agree with that. I think definitely edit out those things that don't need to be there. That's great advice. Okay, do you have any favorite podcasts currently that you recommend?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things that I listen to. Part of it's because I'm a geek. Part of it's because I just like good storytelling. I think some podcasts that I listen to without fail because it helps my job as a journalism and media instructor because I teach more courses other than just podcasting. I listen to two kind of regularly. I listen to Channels with Peter Kafka, which is a kind of a media focused
Mm,
podcast. They talk about a lot of things that are happening in the media industry. I also listen to a podcast called The Town with Matt Bellany. He's a Hollywood reporter, but he focuses again on the business of media. So they're talking about things like film and what's happening in Hollywood, but also kind of like major media deals. If you think like we're recording this on a Thursday, Paramount just got the okay, because Netflix backed out of their deal with Warner Brothers. So Paramount is going to buy Warner Brothers. And like, what does that mean if you watch CNN or if you subscribe to Paramount Plus? Anyways, I think that is really helpful from understanding media at a global sense, those two podcasts. So I listen to
Mhm.
those for my job and kind of like what is happening in the media business. Because even though podcasting is a smaller part of the media business, it is a part of the media business. And
Yeah.
understanding kind of what's going on at those larger levels can really help inform not only kind of what I teach in the class, but like how I structure certain things. For fun, I listen to Search Engine with PJ Vogt. I love it. He's a great storyteller. You know, uh, he did Reply All for a while and then kind of had some issues, but he started this a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and I really enjoy listening to Search Engine.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out. No, those are great. Okay, 2 last questions for you. What is one thing you wish more people knew about podcasting?
Well, like we kind of talked about, podcasting can mean different things for different people. Uh, the youngs will associate podcast with video first, right? So they're going to watch their podcasts. The olds, like us, you're not old, Haley, but you know you've been in the space for a minute, so you get qualified as somebody who's been around for a while. You know, we'll think about it as a listener first medium. But again, I think like podcasting is shifting, and how we approach it, especially like when we got into it, is going to kind of inform like how we think about it. But if we can be nimble and then kind of embrace the change as it happens, and you know, to be excited when Netflix makes a deal with the ringers, this is good for the industry, even if it's not
Mhm.
necessarily good for me because I'm not making millions of dollars right now. But
Right.
it is good for the industry, and that's exciting.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. My last question is, what is the most surprising thing that podcasting or teaching podcasting has taught you about yourself?
Oh wow, what a good question. Well, making podcasts has taught me two things. One I alluded to earlier, I talk a lot. I should not talk so much. Now I guess I'm the interviewee, so it's okay in this
Yeah,
particular.
I think that's actually the most important thing with podcasting is talking. So I think you have
Yeah,
that.
but it's just
I think
like,
that's
oh my
perfect.
gosh, you know, whenever I have to go and edit myself out, I'm just like, oh,
No.
why didn't you just shut up, Dave? Just shut up. Stop talking for a minute. You know, so I've learned certain things making podcasts about myself, and I think the other thing that I love about podcasts is that, and this is kind of a cop out answer, but there's so much to learn, there's so much to discover, and podcasts are a great way to do that. I love podcasts. This is just kind of a personal way that I consume, right? I listen to podcasts when I exercise, and I used to listen to podcasts a lot in the car. Now I have kids and I need to schlep them around, and they're making too much noise all the time. So I never get a chance to actually listen to podcasts in the car anymore, because usually I'm listening to pop music on the radio, which
Mhm.
which is fun in and of itself, but I can't like listen in the car like I used to. But there is so much in the world that's so interesting that I have no idea about. And people that make podcasts know a lot. And if you can find those people that are really passionate about something, that want to share that passion, man, like it can open your eyes to all sorts of different things you had no idea about. And I love that. I love that there is a medium that can expose me to different things that I would never otherwise have an opportunity to learn about. And it's not because I couldn't go to the library and pick up a book, but it's because podcasts, especially ones that are told creatively or that are broad enough that it can kind of, hey, we can touch on one topic one week and another topic another week. Like you can learn things that you just be like, wow, I had no idea, number one. And number two, I love this. This is so cool over here. And so that's one of the things that I think, I know that doesn't necessarily say it taught me anything about, like, I didn't, it, podcasting didn't necessarily teach me about it, but it's just opened my eyes to just the amazingness that's out there and the passion that we as creators have to share that. And that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. Oh my gosh, what a great answer. Dave, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I have loved this conversation. I know that the audience is going to love this conversation too. And yeah, just so grateful for the work that you do and the resources at UNLV. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. And let me just say one more time how proud I am of you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet. How can people connect with you if they are interested in coming to meet you or learn more about the classes?
Sure. Okay, so I'm pretty Amish on social media by choice these days. So if you need to connect with me, probably the easiest way to do it, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's Dave Nourse, UNLV. You can Google that, Nourse. But you can also just email me too. You can Google UNLV JMS, Journalism Media Studies. You can find my ugly mug on like the directory over there. But yeah, we'd love to connect with you if you want to talk about podcasting. We do a podcast workshop every summer here at UNLV that I co-lead with some of our instructors from the J School. Always happy to just chat about podcasting, or if you're in Las Vegas for NAB in April, shoot me a note and let me know, and we'd be happy to show you around or maybe engage with you at the convention center.
Okay, perfect. I'll put those in the show notes. Thank you so much.
Haley, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.